Scene 1, alpha, take 1. Now what do we do with that? What's up everybody, Anthony Saratelli here of Jersey Filmmaker, and welcome to part 2 of my mini-series about editing a feature film. I'm currently editing this film you see behind me called Double Belgian. It's an independent feature-length buddy comedy written and directed by my buddy Graham Winfrey. If you missed part 1 of the series where I talk about media management both on your hard drive and in your NLE, you can click on the link in the notes below or probably on something that pops up above. The same thing applies from what I mentioned in that episode to this one as well, where that the things I'm about to show you are not necessarily the right or wrong way to do them. They are just one way to do them, so if you could take just a little piece of anything that I show you today to speed up your workflow and increase your efficiency, mission accomplished. Enough babbling, let's get right into it today with audio syncing and sequence setups. Alrighty, over here on the desktop, we're gonna go right into Premiere. You can see I already have my Double Belgian project open. And the first thing we're gonna do is look at how I sync the footage. Now we're gonna talk about just syncing in Premiere for now. I know there's great third-party apps like Pluralized, which is great software, but I wanna stick to doing stuff just inside Premiere for this tutorial. So first things first, we're gonna scroll down our Double Belgian folder, Scenes. We're going to work in scene 5 again, and as you can see I have a folder called Syncs, which has sequences for every single take all synced up already, and I already have an example one set up as well, which we're going to use, which is scene 5B, take 8. Now obviously I already have the footage pulled up in my source monitor, but what we normally would have to do is go to footage, go to scene 5, footage, and I know that this clip is A040C003, so it's already selected. And something I have to do, because like in the first part that I mentioned of this series, there was another editor before me that did the trailer, and sometimes he has different in and out points selected here, so I'll try to drag this in and I'll only have a certain part of the clip. So I have to make sure that this is fully selected before I drag it in, but this one obviously is, so let's drag this into our timeline. I do like to try to keep the media off the walls here so that when we sync, we do have some room to move these around if need be when making minor adjustments. So now that we have the footage, let's find the audio, scene 5B, take 8, and drag that in. I'm just gonna move this up so I have some space to see everything. And what I'm gonna do is select all of the files, right click, and go to synchronize. Now you have a couple options in here. If you just wanna sync all the files so that all of them are lined up at the very beginning of the clip, you can go to clip start, hit OK, and it automatically does it. Let me show you again if they're a little more spread out. You'll see that a little easier. Clip start, boom, lined up. Now that's obviously not what we're looking for, so we're going to do it again. Synchronize. We're going to go to audio because you want to sync all of the audio. And in this case, we want to sync to track 2. Let me back it up and show you why. If I solo track 1, you'll hear that it's the internal audio on the red camera, which obviously isn't very good. Check this out. Lots of noise. You can probably hear the fans of the camera. Just very noisy, doesn't help you out, especially when syncing through an option like this. If I solo track 2, you'll notice it's much cleaner, and it's the mic that they put on the camera to use for scratch audio.
What have you been up to lately? I'm in the city. Just got my master's in graphic design.
So we're gonna sync to this track. So back to what I was doing. Right click, synchronize, audio, sync to track channel 2, hit OK. Now this is real time, it's processing. Sometimes it takes longer than other times, but this case is pretty quick, and here we are all synced up. Now let's zoom in and see how it did. We'll look at the slate. Let's unsolo this, see how it sounds. Sounds pretty good, looks pretty good. Let's zoom in as far as we can go. I'd say that looks pretty good. But I'm going to show you a little trick to get this even more accurate than you might even know you could. In the timeline right now, we're viewing in frames per second. We can go 24 frames a second if we want to go one at a time, which only leaves us with minimal space to actually line things up. If you try to move anything, it's 1 frame at a time. If you come over here, click on this little drop-down bar, you can go to Show Audio Time Units, which also has a shortcut of Shift single quote. So if we click on this, it changes the timeline to audio units. Audio units are counted in 48,000 units per second. Check this out. So you can see that there are way more opportunities to get these more in line because there's so many more frames to work with. So this is as far as we can zoom in with video frames per second, but let's zoom in now with audio frames per second. Zooming in, we can see how not so accurate the synchronization actually was. Now we can get it even further, and it gets all the way down to crazy small. You can't even tell what's going on. I don't like to go in this far because I can't even really read this. It just gets mumbo jumbo. I like to go into somewhere about here where I can actually see what these mean, to my eyes anyways. So now I'm going to try to line these up. I'm going to pull the audio track over this way. I'm actually going to put the playhead right here on this bigger peak and try to line things up according to that. So let me try to get this first track right in line. That looks pretty good. I might want to move this one over a step or two, so I'm going to have to unlink these with Command L. And then I want to move this one over, I don't know, 1/48,000ths of a second. And maybe even this one the other way, a couple frames. So now we're looking pretty good. Let's see how this sounds. I'm going to mute the first two channels because I want to see what it actually looks like to the eye and the actual slate.
5 beta, take 8.
Looking pretty good. What I like to do is check another spot in the timeline, being that there's 5 tracks to work with down here, and see how they're lined up elsewhere. I don't know what's going on here, but with this third track it looks like it's way off, and the reason could be here is that this mic might be way away from the actors, so I don't know what this is grabbing from, but let's just play with it as an example. Let's slide this over and try to get this in line. The beginning part of this is now in line. I don't know that this is actually relevant. This track could be, again, way far from the actors, because look over here. This peak is nowhere close to this one, but what is all this nonsense? So I'm thinking that that track is completely irrelevant. We can listen to it to find out. Yeah, it's not even hearing anything. This track must be on another actor or something who's off screen, so this is not something that needs to be lined up, but like I said, you can always check it to see by moving around the timeline like that. But all right, let's say that's done. Now we select all. I hit Command L, which unlinks the top few that were already linked, so we got to do it again. You can do it by dragging or hit Command A, Command L. They're all linked now, easy to grab them. Next thing I like to do is look for the action call. So right after the action, or right around the action call, I'll split the timeline with Command K, delete the part I don't need, click in the empty space, backspace for a ripple delete, and that brings it to the beginning of the timeline. The backslash key, which is right under the backspace key, is your zoom to sequence shortcut, which will bring you from wherever you're zoomed into to back out to full sequence. Another option for you, if you want to get rid of the original scratch audio, you can unlink everything, bring these up, same thing, select all, link. Now these are all linked together. Obviously, you'd want to unmute these two, but I like to leave them there just as reference for me later on, just in case the sync's a little bit off. I know what the original track sounded like and where the audio is supposed to be. Now, keep in mind, sometimes the synchronized button doesn't work at all if you don't have a good scratch track, and most of the time it'll do just like I showed you. It'll be pretty close, but I usually dive in there to get it much more lined up, especially when editing something like a feature film, when you really need it to be perfect. Otherwise, that function is pretty darn good. Even when it's off just that little bit, you probably won't be able to tell because microphones are different distances from actors, and when you're recording at 4,800 frames per second, you're gonna get a delay in some of these mics. So pulling them closer and lining them up is never a bad thing, so you don't have any phasing going on. But it does take time, it is tedious and annoying, but it must be done so that everything is synced up. So that's how I sync everything. Let's close all this down, and again, I have a sequence for each sync. You'll see if I go in here, you have each one of them. And I won't ever touch these files throughout the project because I always want a sync to refer to in case I need to change anything. So what I now do, and this is confusing and I don't know if this is the best way to do it, but I create a selects timeline. I'll line up all the takes on top of each other so I know that each set of files is a certain angle of a certain actor. I have to do a lot of hiding and muting and soloing of each layer so I can see which one I'm working on. But what I'll do before I start picking out these little sections is go through each one of these individually with a pen and paper and write down anything I might like from that take. The reason I do it this way is so I can refer to the notes not only for myself, but for when the director is here and we have edit sessions. It's easier for me to look through my notes and find which takes were good. And most of the time I would delete the sections that I don't like, but the problem here is that I'm working with a director. And even though I might not like that portion of the take, the director might. So I have to leave these all here so I can go back and refer to them, and what I do is I use my notes to know which ones I like the best, so I can then show him those, but we can also look at others if he wants to. So this really isn't my normal workflow. I really make it a little easier for myself in general, but again, when editing a feature and collaborating with other people, this is the option I've taken so that, again, the director can see the takes that maybe I don't like, but I have to leave them open for him to choose. So after I make my selects, I start building my scene sequence, and as you can see, I already have this one built out. And what I'm doing is copying or pasting or dragging over the selects into this timeline, which end up acting as nested sequences, making it easier for me to move around while editing with, again, another person. If I didn't lay it out like this, it would end up looking more like this with every audio file, and doing this I feel is going to be a lot more inconvenient again when working with the director, because there are a lot of changes that are made because my cut is nowhere near the final cut. Once he sees things, he likes to see other takes. We have to slip in things to see what it looks like. So that's much easier to do when I'm working with one layer per video file as opposed to however many this ends up being with the audio files attached. I would even have to slide this up to just be able to see all the audio tracks. It would just get crazy. If this whole timeline was set up just like this, imagine all the stuff that'd be going on. I mean, I have layers tripled up here, so I'd have now 12, 15 layers of audio going down when just trying to create a rough cut. So I'm gonna start like this. The only hassle is I'm gonna have to re-edit every scene. And I know that's going to take a while and be a little bit of a nuisance, but I think it would be even more so a nuisance if I had to set up the timeline like this and again move stuff around, change the edits time after time after time, make small changes, put this in, try this. It's just way easier to work again with one layer of audio instead of 5, 6, 7. Some of these scenes have 8 tracks of audio. So once again, I don't know if this is the best way or not, because at the end I'm going to be doing a lot of recutting, but once that's locked in, then I know exactly which portions of the scene I need. By, let's say, clicking on this, if I go to the beginning of scene 5B take 3 and I double click on this, it's going to bring me to exactly where this starts, and I can cut this out, bring it into a new timeline, and recreate this once it's all locked in. One more little trick that I do when I'm dragging these selects over into the actual timeline edit is I split up these two sequences by dragging this down here and creating this double timeline type thing going on here. So let's say I wanted to take this portion of the scene from here to here, and I wanted to get it, I don't know, we just need to get it in here. I can then just click it, drag it in here, and it copies it in, which is super easy. Or I can cut it out of here if I want so that I know which piece I used, and I can paste it over here. So that's just another trick of how to move things around, how to reorganize your space so that it's more efficient for you. And the last thing I want to show you is how I end up stringing the scenes together. Again, for now, I do the same thing. And what I do is I end up pulling in the scenes that I cut into a timeline. This makes it very simple and organized to work with for now, but again, in the end, will have to be re-edited, but will also be much easier once I relock all the scenes, because pretty much I'll just have to copy and paste in here and make sure everything's lined up correctly. Then you can add all the music and all the sound effects and everything else, and your audio tracks end up going down forever, but this is where I'll string them together for now, again, to work with the director, and then from there, I'll end up cutting a feature-length sequence, which I don't even have yet, but I very much look forward to doing that. And I think that's all I got for this part of the series. I'll be adding more as I go along, but I'll leave you with about a 15-second teaser of Double Belgian.
I'm in love with that chick.
If you're gonna use the brewery to try and pick up girls, can you not lie about us having investors?
What are you talking about?
So I hope that was helpful. Maybe you like the way I do it. Maybe you don't like the way I do it. Maybe you have a different way of doing it. If you do, I'd love to hear it. Please feel free to leave a comment below or reach out to me on any of my social medias, Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, @JerseyFilmmaker. If you like this video, please help me out and click the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, click that little bell so you get alerts to all future episodes. If you watched last week's, you'll notice that this number's still the same because I'm actually recording this right after I recorded last week's episode. Hopefully that's over 1,000 at this point, so thank you to all who have subscribed and getting me to the 1,000 marker. That's a big step. But let's keep it going. Tell all your friends, share this video if you like it, because it really does help me produce more of these and keep getting these videos out to you guys. So thanks so much for watching. Keep an eye out for parts 3, maybe 4 and 5 as I continue to edit this film and I find more things to talk about. I will be adding to this series. But for now, remember to get out there, don't wait, go create, and I'll see you next time.